I'll just quickly talk you through the three key areas of our agenda this morning. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time, 10, 15 minutes, talking about what we've learned from talking to our members. That's been really critical in helping us design and position our proposition going forward. I'll then spend a little bit of time talking to you how we've used that insight from our members, particularly to create what we think is a retirement journey. Some of the challenges that have happened as we've spoken to members about what retirement looks like for them and how we've tried to build that into a journey. And then, as David said, towards the end, I'll introduce the Nest Guided Retirement Fund to you, and then I'll let Paul talk you through some of the more technical investment aspects of that fund. So I'll do the easy bit, and Paul will do the more complex bit. So if we get straight into the three sessions or the three areas of the agenda, I really want to talk about what we've done in terms of talking to our members, because as I said, it's really important to learn from what our members are experiencing and try and make sure that what we design and deliver to them fits with their experience and helps them plan for their retirement. So we've done quite a lot of research over the last 5 years. The next slide that should be just popping up now talks you through that. Obviously, a big change for retirement decisions was pension freedoms, launched in 2015. It turned the world upside down in terms of prior to that, it was all about saving money and then buying an annuity to provide a regular income. That quickly moved on to having much more freedom about how members would use their retirement funds in all sorts of wonderful ways. So we did a lot of research at the time that legislation was put in place or being worked through, and started talking to members about, if annuity isn't the answer anymore, what kind of solutions would you like, and what kind of worries would you have about retiring in a kind of more flexible world. That was 2015. In 2016, that enabled us to launch something called the Nest Retirement Blueprint, which was really our stab at saying, here's the type of solution that members would require in this post-pension freedoms world, that kind of touches on some of the elements of annuity, some of that kind of guaranteed element, but also provides flexibility. And again, I'll talk you through how that's morphed into the Nest Guided Retirement Fund particularly, and Paul will go through some of that detail with you later. More recently, we've done a lot of research with our members around the retirement journey. I've got a number of slides that will kind of give you some background to that. But over the past 18 months, I've been involved in a number of focus groups with research companies that we use, a number of individual interviews with Nest members, really trying to explore what the whole run up to retirement's been like. So we did a lot of work last year on the retirement journey, and we also did some additional research building into the Nest Guided Retirement Fund about what levels of income members might want to see in retirement, and how happy were they with that income or the withdrawals they could take, perhaps being variable because they've got greater flexibility. So all of that research and insight has helped inform how we built our proposition. So hopefully just from that slide you get a feel for the amount of work that we're doing in terms of talking to and listening to our members in helping us provide solutions that hopefully will work for them going forward. I want to pick up some of the key themes now. I'm not going to go through all these. There's 6 bullet points on the slides. Obviously we'll let you have copies of the slides if you want them. Just pick out a couple of things. We kind of split this into 2 areas, the kind of build up to retirement and then how members feel at retirement. I think the overarching kind of feeling when we spoke to our members in the focus groups and research sessions is nobody really wanted to acknowledge that they were getting old. Old age always felt a long way off. And again, the road to retirement, it just doesn't seem a clear journey. It's not like kind of setting out to go somewhere, you know where you're going, you know the route you're going to take. People were kind of, oh yeah, that retirement thing, not too sure how that's going to work out. And again, when we got into the detail of talking to people who had retired or were maybe on the cusp of making that retirement decision, we actually found the road to retirement had been twisty and turny, if that's the way to describe it. A lot of bumps in the road as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second or two. When members actually got to retirement, I think people often think that it's a binary decision about how you retire. That frequently isn't the case these days. We found lots of people who'd kind of drifted into retirement without really realizing, and we found lots of other people who'd moved into retirement and then very quickly moved out again because they enjoyed the social interaction at work or just found that actually sitting and kind of putting their feet up, although it sounds great, wasn't giving them fulfillment. So we actually found that retirement wasn't a binary decision, and people wanted flexibility and wanted to be able to do different things in retirement. And that obviously led to different needs in terms of how they would want their pension savings to be used in retirement over a longer period of time. The other key issue that we found really at retirement is people loved having control of their money. Quite often they felt that in the savings period it wasn't really their money, it was pension money, they didn't really engage with it. Once they'd got to retirement, and they loved having control of their money, but then they were really worried about how they should take control of that money and not make mistakes. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. So a number of key things coming out of the research and the discussions that we had that really informed how we've tried to build our proposition going forward. Just want to pick up a little bit on that bumpy road to retirement. I touched on a couple of examples, but there's a couple of quotes on the right hand side of this slide, which we took from the sessions we ran with our members. But on the left hand side, you'll see some of the things that people perhaps don't expect or hope won't happen, which make the road to retirement a really bumpy one. So divorce often came up in terms of people having retirement plans and then finding that something went wrong in their relationship, and that kind of scuppered their plans, because people are often thinking about retirement as a kind of a family unit, or certainly kind of two individuals retiring together. Forced retirement, redundancy, ill health. Quite a lot of members we spoke to had kind of arrived at retirement without really doing anything. It had just happened to them. Actually, they got made redundant and hadn't been able to find another job, or been in ill health and hadn't been able to go back to work, and that had enforced retirement. So again, the retirement decision there wasn't really one about retirement, it was around something completely different. So people drifting into retirement. And then the final bullet point on this slide on the left hand side, as I said, semi-retirement increasingly coming through, sort of working, sort of not, was the kind of comment we got as well. So we were, I guess, naively hoping for a lovely smooth road to retirement where we could signpost the right things to members at the right time, but we got very quickly a view that wasn't going to be the case. Everybody's road to retirement is going to be slightly different, and people just aren't aware sometimes, not because they can't see it coming or they can't plan for things, but things just happen which kind of send them slightly off course, even if they've got a retirement plan and have set out how they want to retire. So another slide just to reinforce this really. Nest has done a lot of work with our members talking about the savings journey kind of through 20s, 30s, 40s. So we have this period between 50 and 60 as our kind of road to retirement, or approaching retirement milestones, if you like. And as you can see on there, there's just so many things that go on in that period between 50 and 60. You often think of people maybe getting to that age and then the kids are leaving school and going off to university, or maybe getting a job, maybe leaving home. But again, we had lots of members with younger children still at primary school, and that was a key kind of concern rather than their pension planning or their retirement. Grandchildren arriving, and again, that can shape retirement in a number of ways in terms of what members wanted to do with their retirement funds, or perhaps they were moving into a slightly different role as being a carer for the grandchildren while the parents went out to work. And again, you'll see other things on this slide, things like redundancy, divorce, which I've already touched on. So a really complex and muddled journey, certainly from 50 to 60, as people start to perhaps think a little bit more about, I'm building up a pot of money and how am I going to use that to fund my retirement. So our challenge really coming out of all that was to try and create something at Nest, as I said, we called it the retirement journey, that would help our members navigate some of those difficulties. So what I want to do over the next few minutes is just talk to you about how we've responded to some of that research, and also other things that have been going on in the pensions and retirement market, to really boost the Nest proposition and really help members go through that kind of sometimes very muddled decade between 50 and maybe 60, where perhaps there's a bit more engagement with retirement, but as I say, it's still quite difficult to plan because kind of things happen on the way. So this is just a very broad introductory slide. I appreciate there's quite a lot of detail on here. I'm going to go through some of this in a bit more detail over the next couple of slides, but we've really split the journey into three phases, from a kind of helping members firstly discover and clarify quite often what's in their pension pot and what pensions they've got. The other things they might want to do in the discover clarify phase is start thinking about what their expenditure in retirement might be like. Again, quite difficult perhaps in their 50s, but certainly as you get into your later 50s, maybe early 60s, moving to retirement, people often had a slightly better handle in terms of maybe the mortgage is going to repaid before I retire, so I won't have that expense. Maybe they're starting to make plans in terms of I want to travel or take up a hobby. So again, they can start to factor in some of those expenses and also start to think about, well, I'm not maybe going to have to pay for my train season ticket, or I'm not going to drive the car so much, so the petrol cost might go down. And again, the PLSA, the Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association, have done quite a lot of work in this field in terms of setting some retirement living standards, again, to help pension scheme members kind of map out what spending or expenditure in retirement might be like. But a really important phase, discover, clarify, and I'll talk through what Nest is doing to help members kind of navigate that phase. Then as we move into kind of the 60s, mid 60s, we get into the phase of considering and deciding. This is really about making a retirement decision. And I'm sure many of you will be familiar with the wake up packs that we need to send out to members before their intended retirement date, saying, what do you actually want to do with your savings pot? Sometimes that's as simple as, well, I'm not retiring yet, so I'll just kind of carry on for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But again, some important decisions need to be made there. And one of the things that we discovered in our research was this was a really difficult phase because people didn't want to get that decision wrong. And they wanted to have a sense that if they did do something and wanted to change it later, then that would be possible. So flexibility coming to the fore. And then the final stage of the retirement journey, I guess, which I'm not going to talk about too much today, but it's just as important, is once people have retired or started taking some money out of their pension pot, how can Nest or the pension scheme help and support them in later life, particularly if we're still managing their pot. Again, perhaps circumstances change, ill health crops up. Might that be the right time to consider an ill health or an enhanced annuity, for example? So again, there's still a lot we can do at Nest while members are keeping their pot with us and maybe taking money out to help them make sure that they're doing the right thing and to give them that reassurance and just signpost other opportunities that might exist. So just coming back to that discover, clarify journey, I just want to talk you through some of the specifics that Nest has put into place to help members, as I say, navigate what can be quite a tricky period. The first of these is the name is probably wrong, but we picked up the naming convention from some work that the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, did, they have now put in place some regulations that all of their members, when dealing with pension customers, have to send what's called a simplified wake-up pack to members at age 50. Again, Nest isn't regulated by the FCA, we're regulated by the pensions regulator. They don't have equivalent regulations in TPR world yet, but Nest has decided that what's happening in the FCA world is not a bad thing. So we're kind of following this guidance as best practice, or those rules as best practice. The simplified wake-up pack is a very simple document. It's a one page of A4. On the front, you'll see a kind of pot value. And the real call to action for this document is saying, retirement's getting closer. So it's acknowledging the fact that some of our members, as we saw in the research, were kind of, oh, retirement's a long way off, I don't need to worry about it yet. It's starting to just wake people up to the fact that retirement may not be that far away, and you do need to start making some decisions sooner rather than later. And some of those decisions might be about paying more in to boost your pension pot, for example. But the primary call to action here is the opportunity to talk to PensionWise. And again, when we spoke to some of our members who'd actually been through a PensionWise interview or discussion, they found that really insightful in terms of understanding the right questions to ask and really giving the members confidence about making decisions that they might have to make in a few years' time. So again, we're following the kind of FCA guidance here. We're signposting PensionWise, and again, we're doing important things like warning about pension scams. Quite often, when people get into their 50s, their pension pots will be a bit bigger, and as we know from kind of current experience, it's a market where scammers can try and take advantage of people who've got these big pots of money that they're suddenly having to deal with. So we feel this is a really important step in that, or first step in that kind of retirement wake-up journey, and just getting people to think about how they can start planning going forward. And again, not making some of those mistakes, for example, falling into the hands of a pension scammer. What we then do, and if you think back to the slide a couple of slides ago, we had a number of kind of key ages. So what we're doing at Nest is we're sending out a number of trigger emails throughout a member's 50s and 60s, just to try and gently get them to engage with the concept of thinking about retirement. So again, these will be very small, I'm sure, on the screen. You won't be able to read the detail here. You might be able to read some of the headlines. They do get kind of, as we go through the different ages, a little bit more direct. So you'll see the last one talks about retirement options and making a choice. The one before talks about taking control. But these emails are really designed on a regular basis just to give a little bit of a trigger to members to start looking at what pension they have with Nest or with other pension schemes they might have, and start thinking about how they might turn that into a retirement income when they reach retirement, whatever shape that retirement takes, whether it be full retirement, partial retirement, or whatever. And again, you'll see a number of, on the emails, you'll see a number of kind of boxes underneath the kind of main headings. These are different things which we can point members to assist them in that retirement journey. You'll see some of them have the PensionWise logo, just reminding people that PensionWise is there should they choose to use it. And you'll see some other symbols on there, which I'll talk about a bit more in a second or two. So a whole series of engagement emails throughout the retirement journey designed to help members or trigger members to start thinking about retirement. Obviously, if we're providing some triggers to members, it's important that we then give them the support they need to do something about it. I've called this section Supporting the Journey, and I've mentioned the FOG model. Not sure how many people are familiar with the FOG model. FOG was is a behavioural scientist, that's difficult for me to say, from the US. And he talked about a very simple model to get people to do things, and it talked about motivation, ability, and triggers. I'll just give you a very simple example. If your phone rings, that's the trigger to do something. You then have two decisions or two other sets of circumstances you have to think about. Can you answer the phone? That's your ability to do it. So if the phone rings and you're in the shower, you're probably not going to answer that call. If you've got the ability to do it, if the phone's in your hand, your motivation might then come from seeing who's calling you. If it's somebody you want to speak to, you'll answer. If it's somebody you don't want to speak to, you haven't got the motivation, you won't answer. So the challenge for Nest is really about getting the trigger, which is the emails that I've kind of briefly gone through with you, and then giving people the motivation, the ability to do something as a result of that. And what you'll see in the next couple of slides is how we've tried to provide support to members to both give them that ability, give them the confidence to go and have a think about retirement planning, and also motivate them over time. They don't have to make these decisions on the spot, but over time they can start thinking about different bits of their retirement planning journey and gently build up, if you like, to making a decision when it comes to the wake up pack arriving, or 65, 66, whatever that trigger might be to finally retire. So I just want to talk a little bit here about, to support that model, what we've done in terms of the Nest website and something we're calling the Retirement Hub. All of the emails that you saw on one of the previous slides will point people through to the Retirement Hub. It's quite difficult to show this on screen, so I've got a couple of screenshots on the right-hand side of the slide for you. On the left-hand side, some of the things that sit on the Retirement Hub to help members think about their retirement savings. So one of the first things they can do very easily is check their savings. They can click through to the Nest Pension Pot. We're providing links through to the State Pension Calculator, and also links through to tracing other pensions. Links through to, again, existing government sites to help them trace other pensions. And again, over time, that may well morph into something linking through to a pensions dashboard, if the pensions dashboard kind of gets off the ground in the next couple of years. We then take the member on a journey which, having checked what they've got in their pension pots, they can then start to see what they might deliver for them in terms of using the money and pension service calculator. They can go and do that piece of work if they want to, and start thinking about different retirement options. Is it right for this particular member maybe to buy an annuity, to have a guaranteed income? Do they want to be a bit more flexible? So really just starting to give members the information they need to make a decision with a bit more confidence. The third section is really about making the choice. The first thing here is a really straightforward one, which is, when are you going to retire? Most of our members have a default retirement age which links with their state pension age, but often we find that that isn't the reality. People don't retire just because the state pension comes into payment. Some people go a little bit earlier because they choose to. Some people need to work a bit longer, so they stay a bit longer. But there's a piece of information there that enables members to quite easily link through and change their retirement date. That's perhaps one of the most important things that members can do if the state pension age isn't when they're actually planning to retire. And there's other elements in this retirement hub, suggestions on how they might combine their pots if that's the right thing to do, and other bits and pieces like making sure they've got a named beneficiary or a nominated beneficiary if they want their pension pot to go to somebody on their death, and just starting to think about pensions and tax. Quite a complex area, but again, just hoping to give our members a little bit more insight and a little bit more confidence, and perhaps firstly just pointing out that when you take your pension, there's probably going to be some tax payable. So bear that in mind when you're thinking about the level of income or withdrawals that you need to fund your retirement lifestyle. And then just moving on from the retirement hub, which is really our information source, I want to talk a little bit about the kind of product solutions or the options that we offer to our members. This is quite a busy slide, and there's lots of kind of acronyms on here and some complex technical stuff on here, so I'm not going to get into that too much, but I just want to take you through the journey that we've been on at Nest since we launched in 2012 in terms of providing members with the ability to take their pots at retirement. So you'll see on the bottom, we still offer, and it's still there today and has been from outset, the ability for members to cash out, particularly if they're in serious ill health. That might happen before 55, or if they're after 55, they might have a small pot and they might just decide to take that pot as cash. So that's still an option available to our members. Back in the days pre-pension freedoms, when annuities were kind of the only game in town, just about, or the main game in town, then Nest ran an annuity panel, which was helping members who did have a pot that they wanted to turn into a retirement income, do that through a number of links that we had with annuity providers. Obviously, that fell away considerably when pension freedoms were introduced, so we no longer have an annuity panel, but we still offer members the ability to buy an annuity on the open market if that's the decision they choose to make or that's appropriate for them. Just moving up the slide, cash out UFPLS is uncrystallised fund pension lump sum. I'm sure some of you are aware of that. Some of you may not be. A really lovely technical term that the Revenue introduced as part of the pension freedom legislations. It's effectively saying members can take their money when they want to, flexibly as they want. They can either do that through something called drawdown or through an uncrystallised fund pension lump sum. Nest unfortunately can't offer drawdown. That's for reasons within our VIRES, and Nest wasn't set up originally to do accumulation solutions, but we can offer OFF plus, uncrystallised fund pension lump sum. And when pension freedoms was introduced, we immediately moved to offer members the ability to cash out their pensions after age 55 using that route. And then what we found as we kind of moved through is people with bigger pots who were taking the option to cash out quite often didn't want to take all their cash in one go. One of the primary drivers for that may be tax. If they got a 10, 15,000 pot, they were still working and they decided to take that pot, then they'd be potentially moving themselves into a higher tax bracket. So we issued the ability for members to take partial cash out in 2016, which just enabled them to take one lump of money every year. And just really, if they were working with an advisor, or if they were clever enough to work out how much they could take without moving into the next tax band, they would take perhaps just an amount of cash to top them up to the kind of tax threshold. In 2017, again moving up the slide, we were able eventually to offer transfers in and transfers out of Nest. So again, transfer out particularly if members wanted to access Flexi Access drawdown from another provider and have a completely flexible retirement. So again, that capability arrived in 2017. And most recently, we've done two things. Monthly OFF Plus is really taking that cash out facility that I've already talked about, but allowing members to take a monthly withdrawal. So we're getting much more here into the kind of more traditional retirement income solution, where a monthly withdrawal might be a replacement for a wage or a salary, or partial replacement to top up a wage or salary for somebody who's perhaps working part-time. So again, last year we launched the facility for members to take a monthly, you don't need to worry about the OFF Plus bit, but effectively a monthly withdrawal if that's what they wanted to do, just to fit their retirement lifestyle. And then the final thing we've done was launched in March this year is the Nest Guided Retirement Fund, which really sits on top of that monthly OFF Plus facility and provides members with an investment solution to help them manage their money as they're taking withdrawals, and we'll talk a bit more about that over the next few slides. So the final slide for me is really just to give you a little bit of an introduction to the Nest Guided Retirement Fund. I won't go through all the words on the left-hand side. I'll just perhaps pick out the third bullet point, which is the Nest Guided Retirement Fund aims to provide a stable, sustainable level of withdrawals throughout life. This was one of the things we found through our research. Members were quite keen that they liked the idea of having freedom and choice was great. They could use their pension in any way they wanted, but they were really worried about making sure they didn't run out of money and have nothing to live on in later life. Similarly, they were also they wanted to maximize, if you like, the amount of income they could take without leaving perhaps too much in the pot for their dependents and having a more frugal lifestyle through retirement than they perhaps needed to. So again, the Nest Guided Retirement Fund was born out of some of that research we did around the deliver a stable, sustainable income, level of withdrawals throughout life. As I said, it sits on top of that ability to take a monthly withdrawal, but with Nest providing some guidance about how much is safe or reasonable to take to make sure your pot doesn't run out. You'll see a couple of other things towards the bottom of that slide. This is designed for members in the age range 60 to 70. It's designed with members with probably a larger pot size, so over £10,000. Again, the number of Nest members who are reaching the £10,000 threshold is growing exponentially. I know that's word that's been overused over the past few weeks, but we're seeing more and more members hitting that kind of 10,000 pot size, particularly when members are thinking about perhaps transferring or consolidating their pots into a pension scheme, whether that be Nest or another scheme, bringing all their money together in retirement so they can manage it more effectively. And the penultimate bullet point on here is just one worth pointing out. We do have a number of members every year, despite sending them the wake up pack, who don't make a retirement choice. If they're in one of our target date funds, that fund closes 6 months after the end of the year, which it's kind of badged for. So the 2019 retirement fund is due to close at the end of June, early July this year. So again, those members who are still in that fund when we close that fund have to be moved somewhere. So again, that's kind of a default option. And Nest Guided Retirement Fund will be a default option for eligible members who haven't actually decided what to do at retirement. So it'll be our way of managing their money into that kind of fourth phase, into the retirement phase. So that's just a few bullet points to the left-hand side. I'm going to hand over to Paul quite shortly, but I just want to talk you through the visual on the right-hand side, which just gives you a very quick overview of how the Nest Guided Retirement Fund works. Paul's going to talk through some of the detail, but just want to introduce some of the terminology to you. Guided Retirement Fund, again, when we spoke to our members back to that research, we presented a number of options. We asked them to talk about the concept that we've got here and how they describe it. And really the word guided came out quite strongly as a result of that. Members understood that with this proposition, Nest was not telling them what to do, but guiding them on what was a safe, sensible level of withdrawal to enable them to have, as I said, a stable, sustainable level of withdrawals throughout their life. Also, some of the graphics you'll see there, the Nest Wallet, the Nest Vault, and the Nest Safe was again something which came out of our research and presenting options to members on how we should describe some of these things. The Nest Wallet is really an amount of money that Nest will put into a specific pot every year, which is effectively spending money. And again, when we talked about different ways of describing this, the idea of a wallet, some money that's in your pocket that you've got access to, came through quite strongly. The Nest Safe on the right-hand side of the visual there, money for emergencies. So this is a pot, again, Nest will put some money into on behalf of the member, which is really there to cover those unexpected events and make sure that that ability to have a stable, sustainable level of withdrawals isn't compromised. Again, when we talk to members about this, the idea of a safe, something that's kind of a little bit locked away, they know that they shouldn't touch it, they know it's there for emergencies, it's that emergency fund, resonated quite well. So we ended up calling that kind of emergency pot the Nest Safe. And again, just following that kind of financial set of words through, members talked about the Nest Vault as being, that's the money that's kind of locked away that I really shouldn't touch. And when somebody moves into the Nest Guided Retirement Fund, the majority of their money outset will go into the Nest Vault. Paul's going to talk about how that money is managed, but that's really the engine. That's really the money that's there to provide money for future payments into the wallet, so the annual spending money, if I can call it that, and also money to provide some ability to fund later life. Paul's going to talk about how we do that, but effectively we build up a pot between the member's 65th and 85th birthday, we build up a pot to enable them then to go and buy a lifetime annuity to kind of secure that income, give them a guaranteed income from age 85 throughout life. Because again, when we spoke to members, they quite often talked about retirement in different phases, and most members said by the time they're into their 80s, their desire perhaps to spend money or to travel, to do different things, is likely to be less, and that's probably the time where they'd be thinking about, if I could just have a guaranteed amount coming in every month, that'd be absolutely perfect. So again, we've got this concept within the Nest Vault of building up a pot of money which members can then use should they choose. There's no compulsion here, but the idea is it'll build up a pot of money to go and buy an annuity, which will roughly match the withdrawals which have been put into the Nest wallet every year, so they get that sustainable, stable level of income throughout life.